All right. So I just made the video about the limitations, clarifying for myself and others how I'm going to teach that. I think it's simple enough. I think it's basic enough. Excuse me. So now the next will be the rocky soil where the seed falls, but it sprouts roots. It's able to sprout, but because the roots are too shallow, the sun burns it out. It doesn't have the roots to withstand the heat. And then it withers and dies. And that, digging roots, putting roots down, that's, I believe, is analogous to deepening your understanding of what God wants. So after you've softened your heart, you have to learn how to protect your heart and to learn what God wants. How you're supposed to live, how these limitations that you have, how to manage them, how to handle them, what to do with them, so that you don't, so that you're not hurting yourself or others. How to, just how to live in the world, and so you have to learn what God wants. How has God said you should do this? And it's that's where we get into reading the Bible, learning the stories of the Bible, the teachings, what Jesus taught about how to live in the world, how to treat others, and the commandments and loving God. So deepening your understanding of that, learning to put God's outcomes above your own, the way that God wants you to live versus the way that you want to live, because the way you want to live is based on your assumptions about what is right and wrong, what you want for yourself, how you want the world to work, or how I want the world to work. And that's the wrong way to live, because every human being in the world, if we were all, it was up to us to be God, the world would be chaos, and most of the rest of the world, if I was God, I would want the world to run a certain way. I think I'm being objective, but I'm not. I can't be. And I can't know the long-term effects. Those are my limitations. That's what you learn as you soften your heart. So the only real good, the only real good is God and what God wants. And as you soften your heart, you realize you can't get everything. Things can't always go your way. And So deepen your roots, teaching, learning. Okay, the commandments. What is original sin? Why was that a sin? Which I went over in the last one. That's part of softening your heart. Okay, reading the Gospels, seeing the stories, hearing the parables. What is it to love my neighbor? What is it to love God? How do you obey God? And seeing that as the bigger picture instead of just what I want, what feels good to me, my comfort. Doing God's will instead of what I will. And that's one of the big things. So by softening your heart, you're learning humility and compassion. When you start to deepen your knowledge of what God wants, then you learn patience. You learn, what I want to happen is not happening here. Either what I want to happen, God isn't ready for it to happen yet, or God has something else in mind for me and I'm not going to get it. So I just need to be patient. It's not me, it's not what I want, it's what God wants. And that's part of humility is okay, I'm not the center of the universe. But then also learning what God's outcomes are and aligning your outcomes with those. That's Proverbs 3:6, talking about acknowledging God in all things, in all your ways, and then your paths will be straight. I think that's when those align, when what you want and what God wants align, then, that can be, I think that's what that verse means, is aligning what you want with what God wants, and then you're doing the right thing, and then things. It's when you're trying to swim upstream, which I thought the other day about that example of so say like Taoism is all about going with the flow and yin and yang and just kind of riding that. So the image they give of it is like a cork floating on a just floating on a river. As a Taoist, that's what you're supposed to be like. Whereas it like anti-fragile, so that's more of a robust. That's you're just along for the ride. Whereas the things you bump into as you're floating downstream help you float better. Imagine something like that, like a boat floating down a river, and every rock you run into makes your boat stronger. So but all right, I must go. God bless. I pray this finds you.